about past lives again because it's one of my favorite topics, but a little bit different to explaining past lives or how you know you've had one, those sorts of things like my previous video. Instead, this one I'm going to get a little bit more personal with you guys, talk about how I've discovered my past lives and how I've dived deep into those, and a little bit of how you can potentially do the same as well. So let's get started. Firstly, I came across the idea of past lives probably about maybe 4 years ago, I think. And prior to that, with my strict Christian upbringing, it was never even a thought in my mind. I'd heard of karma, I had heard of people thinking they reincarnated, but I didn't really think that's what happened to us. Bit of backstory, I have always had this strange obsession with Louisiana, specifically New Orleans, but just, anything about the South just gets my heart racing. It's very bizarre. I'm from Australia, but I would, as a teenager, as soon as I was out of the church, I started inhaling anything that was set in the South. I've always loved things like Gone with the Wind, and like True Blood. Oh my gosh, that just took me on a wild ride. Those sorts of things, anything with the accent. Even in high school when I was 12, I remember we did a home economics class of cooking, and we were asked to cook Cajun blackened fish. This was before I was vegan, and it was, I can't even describe the experience. It was spiritual without me realizing that it was spiritual. It was like I had found some part of my soul in this piece of fish and these spices that we used. And, we talked about gumbo and Cajun and Creole cooking, and it lit my heart on fire. And I think I cooked that dish for my parents, oh gosh, once a week for years. It was my go-to cooking dish because I just fell in love with it. I even bought books on, Cajun cooking, and then sort of got more into the culture of like Louisiana. It was just this bizarre obsession that I had, and got worse with time. Anyway, when I had just had my daughter, so it had been 27, and my mum and I saw a psychic. I actually got my mum to see a psychic medium. I'd sort of been dabbling a little bit, but I didn't really know my true, gifts that I have. But we saw a psychic medium. I myself am not a medium, so this was a great chance for me and my mum. And my mum particularly to connect with some people. I thought it'd be really good for her, and I just sort of sat back with my tea and just watched and listened. It was fantastic. And at the very end, I did ask a question, which was, how come people believe in past lives? If we have mediums who can connect with those who have previously passed, wouldn't they have been reincarnated? And my thoughts on the question were more like, mediumship is proving reincarnation wrong. But she turned around and said, no. What happens is, when you pass over, you go to the other side, and you can choose to stay there for a long time or a short time. Some people are reincarnated very quickly, and some people are not. And she said sometimes she can't connect to people. They're just not there, or not available, or they don't come through. And that might be that they've reincarnated really fast. Oftentimes people that have died in a very traumatic way, or with suicide or something like that, they often actually reincarnate quite quickly. But she said sometimes people, especially those who have completed suicide, may stay on the other side to do some further learning, almost in a school-like environment. And she explained that we pass on, we go through a life review where you're not judged, you just go through start, medium and finish of your life, look at it all, how it's affected you and everyone else. And then you can choose to guide one of your descendants, you can choose to stay on and learn something. There's lots of different things you can choose to do, or you can choose to come back. But when we do come back, we come back in soul groups. Soul groups I love, I think they're fantastic. And once she said all these words, I went and dove really deep into all of the literature that I could find on it. Brian Weiss has some fantastic books. Many Lives, Many Masters, for example, is a really good one. So yes, you come back, and you come back with the same soul group. So your great grandmother might come back as your daughter, or your best friend, or something like that. We stay in each other's lives, and usually someone that might have been a teacher in your past life comes through and almost fills a teaching role in this life as well. And there's all sorts of things about soul contracts. On the other side, we sign something with someone like, I'm going to help you learn this lesson, you're going to help me learn that lesson. So there's lots of stuff that goes on that we're not aware about. Now, After this question, she kind of paused and said, "Oh, you've had 2 past lives in Louisiana. That's why you're so damn obsessed with the place." And I'm going, how did she know? And even my mum knew that my secret obsession with it, so she was convinced as well. And as soon as she said it, it was like a validation. So I do recommend a past life reading if you can get one, but a validation of just, oh my gosh, she's right. That feels true to my soul, hearing those words. She said, one, I was a black man and she could see me on the bayou. So on a boat going down the bayou, a small boat by myself. And she couldn't see too clearly on the other one, but I have gone deeper with my own reflections as well. And just to sort of further prove the weird Louisiana thing, I worked in Louisiana on a goat dairy farm in the middle of nowhere in a town of about 100 people. Somehow wove that into my journey. My first proper spiritual awakening, I don't know if it's the word, I think experience, my very first proper experience was in Louisiana. It kind of ignited a lot of what I am now and today. I guess it's maybe a part of soul remembrance, I'm not sure. My husband proposed to me in Louisiana, in a place called St. Francisville. So there's a lot of connection that I have with that area. Now, ways that you can do this sort of work by yourself is to either see someone who specializes in past life readings. I've since seen a reader on that, and she brought up another life where I was the daughter of someone who was accused of witchcraft, and so my mother ran and told me to hide, and I was not warm enough, and I ended up dying in the cold. And that resonates because I'm always cold. That's why I now love living in Perth, because it's so hot. I'm one of those people that just really feels the cold no matter the temperature. I've got the blankets on and that sort of thing. So that part resonated, and I have a feeling that my mother might be my daughter now. She is, some of the things that she says, for example, she'll crawl up into bed with me. She's 2, by the way. Put her arms around me, hold me to her chest and say, "I'll never lose you again." And I'm lying there going, that's a bit creepy. She has told one of my friends, when mummy was a little baby, she was in my tummy. And they're like, no, you were in your mummy's tummy. And she goes, no, mummy was in my tummy. And she gets really funny about it, like she's remembering. So I think we've swapped roles for this life at least, and that's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And we have such a strong connection. I have no doubt that I have been with her many times before. I actually did one of Brian Weiss's past life regression meditations. So on YouTube, and I'll pop a link in this one as well to that video. There is one where you can lie down on your bed or sit in a chair and go through what he takes his patients through when he does a regression. And what this did was bring up images and thoughts and sounds and that sort of thing that I then bolted up right afterwards and wrote it all down. And the one that I went into that time was, I very clearly know my name was Mary, whereas none of the other lives have I ever received a name. This was the first time I had a name, and that was Mary, and that I was deaf because I couldn't hear anything and needed help, a lot of help. And it was in France, off the coast of France. And in the image I got the death scene, which is quite hard, but sometimes necessary depending on where you're at. But I was in bed and I had my son by my side, and when I looked at him in my meditative state, I could tell that this was, whilst it was my son in that life, it was the soul of my brother from this current life. And I went, oh my gosh, no wonder, because I do tend to mother him quite a bit. So I'm like, well, that's probably just coming up from a past life. And knowing that is quite funny because it's changed how I am with him now. I'm, purposely going, I'm not your mum anymore. I'm going to step back. You do you. So it's helped me to sort of change how I am in this life a little bit for the better, I think. So that's really interesting. Then I'm going to show you a little thing that I did. This is just a map of the world, as you can see. And what I used, I sat down with my pendulum, my lovely, oh, sorry, I just knocked the whole table. Sat down with my pendulum, and I'll hold this up here so you can see. And I basically just asked, show me where I have had previous incarnations. And I went across along the top and sort of going all the way down to the bottom of the page slowly. And you know, you can go up and down like this, whatever you want and however you work with your pendulum best. I just waited until it gave me a yes signal, so I might stay over a spot for a little bit, spot for a little bit, spot for a little bit. And the spots where it lit up, let me show you. There was just above Vancouver, so just above Vancouver, which is interesting because I felt very drawn to Canada, and I actually lived in Banff, which is in Alberta, just to the east of Vancouver, and that's where I met my husband in this life. And there was right there, that is New Orleans, or Louisiana at least, and it went off there, and a little bit up here on the coast. There was one down here in Peru. I've worked in Peru. It's funny, it's like I have been consciously drawn to the places where I have existed before, which is, if you've seen my other reincarnation video, it is one of the signs when you're obsessed with a place or a culture or drawn to somewhere, that's often like your soul remembering and wanting to re-experience it and go, oh yes, I guess this was in the past, I don't need to be here now, or just reveling in that memory. So I've worked in Peru in the jungle, and that's in here. There's Peru, it looks like potentially Colombia up in the north there, Buenos Aires as well, and I speak Spanish. So the fact that I've got 3 lives there in South America, and then I picked up Spanish like that, that gives a little inkling of, you know, those lives there as well. There's one in Russia, which I don't have a recollection of. There's a few there in Europe, but it's hard because this was quite a small map. So where it went off, it wasn't super specific. And in Europe, all those countries are so close together. But it looks like there's one in Madrid as well, Cairo, Egypt. So very, very interesting stuff. This is a fun exercise, so definitely give that a go if you have a pendulum. So that's a few ways that you can do that, and you can start to connect with your past lives. I've since done lots of meditation and tarot readings on what I need to learn from them, what I need to let go from them, anything I'm holding on to, any fears, anxieties, that sort of thing. That can be really helpful as well. And I'm wondering if I use this video platform to discuss my supernatural. I will. You're here, you're listening. I'm going to tell you one of my supernatural experiences in Louisiana. Oh, I bumped the table again, I'm so sorry. So, when I went to Louisiana in 2013 for the first time, I remember stepping off that, I didn't step off a plane, I went to Florida first and then drove across. But when I got to New Orleans, firstly, just breathing in that hot, humid air felt like home. Secondly, I was compelled to go and get a tarot reading. And I kept thinking, nope, it's going to open up a can of worms. I'm going to open up a portal to hell. I'm going to get possessed. This is not a good idea. I can't do it. But I just had that like, don't go and do it, you got to do it. So I went and got my very first tarot reading. And I thought, it's the only time to do it when I'm alone. I don't have anyone, you know, judging me around me. They're not going to know. I can just not tell anyone. When I got this tarot reader to read for me, and I remember just sitting there, and I was the typical skeptic, because I sat there and went, and I didn't give her anything, the poor thing. Very cold reading. I would have been very closed off. I must have been really difficult to read, but that didn't change the fact that it was all very, very accurate, which I think scared me a little as well at the time. Left that, went to this goat dairy farm where I was to work, and I was living in a caravan out the back in USA. That's called a trailer, so separate from the house, and that's where I had quite an intense experience. That was my first experience of sleep paralysis, and I woke up, and usually sleep paralysis, people say that they feel a weight on their chest. I didn't feel that. Instead, I felt someone holding my wrists on the bed, so like this, I was on my back, holding my wrists down, and I could lift my head up, I could lift my chest off the bed, but I could not move my arms. It was terrifying. It was quite dark. We were out in the middle of nowhere, so there was no light pollution, and I couldn't see anything in front of me. I couldn't feel anything except for on my wrists. And I remember reverting straight back to my Christian upbringing and, you know, in the power of Jesus' name, be gone, all of those sorts of things, praying fervently, put your guardian angels around my bed, all of those sorts of things, which are very powerful words to say, they're very powerful prayers to say. They do work. Even if I'm not a Christian anymore, these sorts of things still hold a lot of power. So that was terrifying. The next night, I remember going to sleep with the lights on and the music on and praying before bed and seeing an indent in the bed next to me and feeling like somebody sat down. That was terrifying. Cue more praying. I was so scared. I was really, really scared. In hindsight, that was a very negative energy. There was a very negative entity. I don't know if it was Spirit's way of giving me a bit of a shock to the system that I am more open to the spiritual world. I don't know if it was something on the land. It was quite close to Civil War battlegrounds. There's a lot of history in those parts. I'm not sure. I don't know. I wasn't aware or open enough then to question it. It was just terrifying to me. And of course I blamed the tarot reader. I was like, what has she done? She's attached a spirit to me. And I remember telling the girl that I was staying with, I said, has anyone ever said anything about the trailer here? And I felt so silly asking her. And she just looked at me dead in the face and said, now what did you bring back with you from New Orleans? I thought, oh, okay, maybe I've definitely brought something here because no one else has said anything. So I'm not really sure. When I did, she had a friend who was a witch. This was the first witch I'd ever met, a male witch. And he came over, checked out the place. I'm pretty sure we cleansed it. And then after that, nothing was actually in the trailer. I didn't feel anything in there. But at night, I would hear like really long, low scratching on the metal on the roof. And I kept saying, it's just a stick. It's just a tree blowing in the wind, scratching on the top. That's all it is. And then waking up in the morning, turning around, and there is no trees that could be touching it. Quite terrifying. But I figured we'd done something that it couldn't get in anymore. So that was terrifying, awakening, all sorts of things. So then after my stint there working on the farm, I went back to Louisiana and I actually went into I think it was called Voodoo Authentica. Maybe it was a different one. Went into a voodoo practitioner's store and I was just talking to them how I wanted to go and see Marie Laveau's grave. It was open to the public back then. And, what are the customs I should be adhering to? I want to be respectful because a lot of people would put 3 X's on her grave and ask for a wish and give her an offering. And then once the wish was granted, come back and circle it to show her power. But he said that is false. That is just something almost like a pop culture thing that's popped up and it's desecrating her grave and it's not a good thing to do. But to leave an offering. He also gave me a tidbit which I now use every time. If you go into a graveyard or to a cemetery, walk in backwards, leave some coins at the door as an offering at the entrance, and then when you leave, walk out backwards. That way you never came and you never left and nothing can follow you home. When he said that, I went, follow you home? I went on a cemetery tour of New Orleans, a Garden District cemetery tour, to go and see where Interview with the Vampire was filmed and all of that when I was first in New Orleans. And I was like, maybe it wasn't the tarot reader. Maybe I just picked something up in the graveyard because I didn't do what you're supposed to do. I didn't know. So that's potentially my theory now. And then once I did that, I went into the graveyard, did the offering, never came, never left, all of that. He gave me some ritual oil for protection as well. Didn't have anything happen after that. So it was all over and done, all good, all gone. So it's not my last experience with sleep paralysis, unfortunately, but that was the most terrifying. And that was when I started to, I guess, open up a little bit to the possibility of the other side and that I might be a little bit more sensitive. I became a little bit more aware. And then upon returning to Australia, yes, I went straight into tea leaf reading and divination and just, it went from there and it grew. And now look where I am and I'm happier than ever. I feel more in control. I'm helping people. It's, it's so exciting. It's so overwhelming. I feel like I'm here and I'm doing my purpose. So it's funny how little things in life can all lead up to, where we're meant to be and pushing us to where we should be if we're open to them and if we listen to them. So there's a very deeply personal intro into me and my life. So let me know what you thought. Please like and subscribe so I can do some more videos for you guys. Make sure to check me out on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, obviously YouTube, and I also have a Patreon page. So if you're after some more one-on-one time with me, sign up on Patreon. You will get access to live Q&As, free readings, bonus content as well. I do lots of worksheets with the moon and tarot reading if you want to get into that and learn more about it. And you get access to a secret Facebook group as well, where you can interact one-on-one with me and ask questions, almost like a mentorship style. So definitely check that out. Also, the Intuitive Souls podcast recently did an interview with me about Mercury retrograde. So if you want to go and give that a listen as well, that'll give you all you need to know for any Mercury retrograde. So hopefully that all helps, and I look forward to connecting with you soon. Bye!